Next question.
Matt Miftu with the Oakland Press here. How is your mindset as far as, let's say it's a week you're doing an IndyCar race. Are you in touch with the NASCAR side? Are you thinking all IndyCar that week? Then you go to NASCAR, you think all NASCAR? Or are you thinking about both and in touch with both teams?
Yeah, good question. It just depends on the circumstances. I will say that the IndyCar Series is my primary focus this year. I'm doing the full season in that, and I definitely think about that a lot. And with the NASCAR stuff, it's I'm learning such basics that you can't just look at a tape or read a book about. You have to just get out there and do it and get familiar with things and get comfortable. So, that's it's not as detailed as the IndyCar stuff that I'm doing. So I will say that usually on the race weekends they're very focused on whatever it is I'm doing. But because of my knowledge about an IndyCar and the technical aspect of it and knowing about the car, I can be more helpful. And help give my engineer and I can work together, which is on this side called the crew chief. We can work together a little bit more and play off of each other to go forward. And he has more questions about where I want to start for the next weekend. So, for instance, on the way out here, on Wednesday, I was speaking to my engineer about Sonoma for next weekend. But I definitely don't have that kind of technical, help to offer Tony Jr. I just found out there was 2 truck arms, not just one. I mean, I don't, it's so over my head right now. I'm just, when we make changes on the weekend or on test days, he tells me what they are and what they do, and it's a constant learning process for me. But I pretty much tell Tony what I'm feeling, and then he adapts and changes the car for me. So like I said, I don't have quite the technical intel yet on these cars, but in IndyCar I do, so I find myself speaking to my engineer more in the IndyCar side.
Any other questions? Bob?
Have you started to kind of piece together your schedule for next year yet, with lots of speculation of where IndyCar will be on certain days and where NASCAR races will be? Are there certain tracks you definitely want to go back to, or is it just going to depend on how the schedules end up?
Another good question. I've heard that there are some schedules coming out now. Maybe a photographer, I think, was alluding to something about the schedule changing for Nationwide next year. So I don't know that. I don't know what those changes are, but I have no doubt that we'll be looking at the schedule. Probably somewhat now, and then again after the season to make some decisions. But there are also some tracks that I haven't been to yet that are left to do this year in the Nationwide Series. So, the next one after this is Dover, and like Elliott Sadler came over to the truck yesterday, and he was asking what the next one was, and I said Dover, and he was like, oh, and everybody keeps doing that. And so I don't know if it'll be one of those races that I'll want to get as much practice as possible and be back to next year, or, say that's a little tough right now, let's try something else. I have no idea, but there are a lot of Nationwide races that I haven't been to yet. So we'll just have to see how it goes. And, schedules tend to change a little as the end of the season comes. I'm sure that whatever comes out right now could be changed again. So, definitive answers won't come until the schedules are completely set.
Nate?
Danica, you mentioned at the outset you were talking about how you learned that here the first lap is the best one, which I know is kind of counterintuitive versus IndyCar, right? Because I think in IndyCar it's that as the fuel load lightens, your handling improves, the balance. But can you just kind of explain the difference there?
You guys have a lot of good questions today. I mean, Nate, in an IndyCar, I guess one of the funny things in these cars is that, you do tape the car up and you do, drop the rear track bar or do all kinds of things for qualifying, but, you cool things off in the engine. There's a lot of little stuff that takes some time to do a qualifying run. And in IndyCar, if you want to do a qualifying run, you run light load, you might take some downforce off, and, you might straighten out the rear toes, you might, stiffen up the rear spring. I don't know, there's different things. You want to get the car to rotate, and, you want to free it up, and in these cars they seem to want to add downforce and give the rear more grip, and because they don't have as much ultimate grip as an Indy car. So yeah, it is one of those things that you don't ever have to practice with light fuel and fill it up. And in an IndyCar, you have to plan that. You have to think, okay, I'm going to start the session low fuel, do a qual sim, then we'll fill it up, and then we'll do some race running. Or sometimes you think to yourself, let's fill it up, let's run the fuel down, and then we'll do a qual sim at the end of it when the fuel load is light. But then you have to plan for whether or not you're going to actually get through the fuel load. There's just different strategies to testing and qualifying runs and things like that. So yeah, it's but it is in it just shows that these cars are more on, they just have less grip, and so, when you have a new tire, the funny thing that I don't understand is how when the track is more green, it seems like a lot of times it's quicker, and then as the weekend goes on, as more rubber goes down, somehow it gets greasier, and maybe that's not always the case, and again, I'm really inexperienced at this point, but it seems like perhaps it goes slower, and so that's something I don't completely understand, but it seems to be the case. And so, yesterday, if I would have been more familiar with the car and more familiar with the track and in a stock car, I'm sure it would have been, a lot quicker for me, just having been familiar. But, that's the way it goes in these cars, and that's the learning curve. And that's why I need to remind myself to have patience. And, thanks for those who do, too.
Do you sometimes wait for the car to get better? Like in IndyCar,
yeah.
As you make laps, you think it's going to get better, and it just doesn't?
In an IndyCar, do you wait for the car to get better? And sometimes, yeah, that's that does happen. The balance shifts as the tires warm up, and so if the car is loose or oversteering in an Indy car, and you think to yourself, as the run goes on, a lot of times the front is what gives away. It's similar to these cars; the front will give out, and so sometimes you can feel more comfortable then, and maybe be able to hold it down on the line better and go faster. Sometimes that's the case, but definitely, light fuel load is the best in an Indy car, and so at the end usually is the quickest. At the end of a race and the end of a stint is the quickest. So, yeah, it's a little opposite of these cars.
We'll take our last question from Lee.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. There's a report on Racer about IndyCar drivers form new association. Dario Franchitti, Justin Wilson, Tony Kanaan will front a new IndyCar Drivers Association. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you familiar with what's going on there?
Yeah, at Mid-Ohio last weekend, we got together as drivers, and we think it's a good idea to be able to have a voice, and to be more professional and unified on what we want, and those things apply to safety, and if there's some runoff or guardrail that doesn't look safe for us, well, you know what, we're the drivers and we're the ones out there risking it, so we want something changed. And, to be able to come together on those things, to come together on, the competition side of things, something that's been, a bit of a hot button in IndyCar lately, given especially Edmonton, is the blocking situation with us, and, coming together on what we think those rules should be and how to change them, things on the media side, everything, just so that we have a voice because we are participating. We definitely don't have that much input, and so anytime you come together as a group, I think you're more powerful. So yeah. So we're going to have what I guess used to be called CDA, maybe in the kart days. Maybe it was CDA. I can't remember, something like that. I wasn't there. So, but a drivers' union kind of thing, and it's not going to be something extensive. In the old days, they used to, all pay to be in it, and there was a point person in particular that was employed to handle things, but it's just going to be us drivers for now, and it's really a way for us to have an opinion and have a voice that we maybe haven't had as strongly before.
Do you see any need for that over here?
I definitely don't have she asked if I see a need for that over here. I definitely don't have enough experience over here to say whether or not you need one or not. I definitely don't want to say anything about this side of things until I have much more time under my belt.
Danica, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.